Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back another video day, and today the NFL announced the 2025 season's opener that will be played on September 4th on NBC. Now, Mike Tirico, who will be calling the game and will be calling all Sunday night football games next year for the NFL, went on the Today Show today and announced the NFL season opener. We obviously knew the Philadelphia Eagles would be the team hosting this game. Of course, they are the Super Bowl champions, but who would be the team that they'd host? And that is the Dallas Cowboys. You know, as a big Cowboys hater, I'm excited for this game. I really am. This is a division rival thing. Look, you could have seen the Commanders Eagles. That's another great division rival in this division. But I think, honestly, just to me, and I think we saw it in last year's season, Washington Philadelphia matchups, I think, go better at the end of the season. We saw those matchups in the season. They were great. And so I think those are matchups I think, are better to see than the season, especially if the division's going to be a tight race between those two teams. And there were a couple other teams that you could have thrown out there that the Eagles could have hosted that maybe could have been better than the Cowboys, but I like this matchup. Dak Prescott's going to be healthy, and here's what it reminds me of. I think this is a great comparison of after the 2020 championship for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We saw the Buccaneers host the Dallas Cowboys, and Dak was just coming off a terrible leg injury. And, here we are. The Eagles just won the championship. They're hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Dak just come off a really bad injury, had to have surgery, missed the rest of the season. I wouldn't say this injury for Dak Prescott it wasn't as bad as the leg injury he suffered in the 2020 season. But in that 2020, I remember that game against the Bucs and the Cowboys. It was one of the best opening games I think I've ever watched between the Bucs and the Cowboys on an opening night game. And so I think look, to me, as someone who's hated on Dak Prescott in the past, as someone who hates the Cowboys, I think Dak Prescott's going to have a good season. Does that mean this Cowboys team's going to have a good season? I don't think so. I think at best this Cowboys team is a 6 or 7 seed that, loses in the first round. At worst, a team that goes 7-10, 8-9, and continues to look terrible. But to me, for the Cowboys to go 10-7, 11-6 this year, and Dak has a good year, that is much better than what they saw last year. And just I feel like when you see a bad year like Dak Prescott had last year, he usually bounces back. I'm just talking about good regular season. I'm not saying the guy's going to have a good postseason and he's going to lead the Dallas Cowboys to the championship, because I would bet all my money that he's not going to do that. But that doesn't mean he can't have a good regular season. And that is something I believe Dak Prescott's going to do this year. Where to the point where, now that he has George Pickens, he can lead this Cowboys team to 10 or 11 wins at the most, 7 or 8 at the smallest, but still statistically have a good year for this Dallas Cowboys team. Now that they've added some offensive weapons for him at the wide receiver position with George Pickens. And there could be more to come with this Cowboys team at the wide receiver position to be added to. So I think it's going to be, like I said, I think it's going to be a good year for him. For this team, I don't think so. I don't think it will be. But for this Cowboys team, I think you look at their run defense last year. Most of the year, their run defense was atrocious. There's going to be a test right away, week 1, with going up against Saquon Barkley. That will be a tough challenge. That will be a tough challenge to deal with. But one thing I want to go over is, were there any teams that could have been better to host, for the Eagles to host, than the Dallas Cowboys? We look at the New York Giants. I think the New York Giants can be improved this year for sure. You've got Russell Wilson at quarterback. That can be an improvement, but I don't think you wanted the Giants in the first game of the season. Commanders, like I talked about, I think they're a team you want to see later in the season. Those are two games. The 2 games they faced the Commanders, or the 1 game they host the Commanders, but 2 they played them twice. Those are 2 games you want to see late in the year. Chicago Bears, that could have been an interesting one to see Caleb Williams in the opener against the Eagles. But if the Bears continue to play the way they've played in the past, that might not be a great game. And then the Lions, honestly, that could have been a better choice. And you get the Broncos, Raiders. I don't think you're thinking about those teams. The Rams. I think the Rams and the Lions are the only teams that I look at that would have potentially been better than going up against the Eagles. But here's the one thing I look at: the Lions just recently were selected a couple years ago to play in opening night against the Kansas City Chiefs, and we've already seen them in opening night recently. The Rams as well in 2022, but that's because they were hosting, not the visitor. The Lions just a couple years ago were the visitor against the Chiefs. Maybe you don't want to see them as the visitor again. So that's one thing you could consider. And then for the I don't really know what to say for the Rams. The Rams I think probably would have been a better choice than the Cowboys, but there's still a lot of drama. Division rivals, week 1 already. Dak Prescott's coming back from an injury. And it's instant drama in the division already. So I like it. I really do. As of who's going to win the game, if I had to bet my money on it, I'd say the Eagles. But sometimes champions can get a little distracted and lose. We've seen it in the past. We saw it with the Chiefs against the Lions. We've seen it in other other times where NFL champion loses week 1. Caught in the moment. We've seen that before, so I wouldn't be surprised if it happened again. But since it's the Dallas Cowboys, I don't think it happens. But here's another interesting thing that I didn't note: that Dak Prescott last year did not face his Philadelphia Eagles team. Cooper Rush started both games against the Eagles. We didn't see Dak Prescott play the Eagles last year, and so that's an interesting thing that we will see already week 1. Let me know your thoughts on this game in the comment section, and peace out.